Welcome to German with John Berlin, and today is a very interesting lesson. Today we'll be learning the verbs in the German language. Verbs are the building block of any sentence, and the more verbs we know, the better we can speak any language. Now, in German, we'll not just be learning the meanings of verbs, we'll be learning how to identify a verb and what a verb requires. Up till now, we have learned that with the help of cases, we understood the personal pronouns, the articles, yes. Now today we'll be learning the cases, the verbs as well with the help of exactly the cases. Yes. So basically, let's have a look. Nominative, a verb is basically called nominative in German when the verb requires just one case. That means nominative is basically the Latin for the number one, and if a verb requires only one case to make a sentence, then it is called a nominative verb. A verb which requires two cases to make a sentence, then that kind of a verb is called accusative verb. Accusative is the Latin for number two. Yes, thus you get the meaning of accusative as well. Dative is a verb which requires three cases to make a sentence, and it's also the Latin for number three. Thus you understand why nominative, accusative, and dative exist. What's the meaning? Yes. And to understand it better, let's have a look at some verbs. The first verb is treffen. Treffen means to meet. Who meets whom? So what does the verb require? Treffen requires who, the person who's meeting, and whom, to whom the person meets. Yes. Then the verb is besuchen, which is to visit. It's who visits whom. It requires who, the person visiting, and it requires whom the person visits. Yes. Einladen again means to invite. Who invites whom? It requires who, the person who's inviting it, and whom the person invites. Yes. Anrufen, to call. Who calls whom? It requires who's calling, and it requires whom he calls. Yes. And similarly, hören, it's to hear. Yes, who hears whom? It requires who's basically hearing, and whom basically you hear. Yes. Who hears whom? The person who's hearing and whom you hear. Perfect. So fragen, which is to ask. Who asks whom? Who, the person who's asking, and whom the person asks. So as you see, these verbs which I just explained in front of you are accusative verbs. They require two cases, who and whom being nominative and whom being accusative. In total, it requires two cases. That's why it's called accusative verb. Moving forward, let's have a look at some other verbs. Okay, machen. The meaning of machen is to make, sometimes also to do. We'll go with to make. So let's say I make a pizza. Yes. So what does the verb require? It requires who, the person making the pizza, I, and what? The pizza. Yes. So again, the verb machen is basically an accusative verb. It requires two cases. Who, the person baking. Nominative, what the thing is being baked. Accusative. Now I can also say the sentence with a little more detail. I make for you a pizza. Yes. Now if I say I make for you a pizza, the verb machen, which is to make, requires who, the person making the pizza, for whom the pizza is being made, and what is being made, the pizza. So basically the verb machen will then become dative. Why? Because it requires three cases. Who, that is nominative. For whom, that is dative. And what, that is accusative. So it requires three cases, then it also becomes dative. So you will notice that all the verbs which are accusative in the manner of who and what, yes, not who and whom, but in the manner of who and what, all the accusative verbs can also become dative if you add the question for whom. Let's see if it's true for the other verbs. Lesen, I read a book. who reads what, but then I can say I read for you a book, who reads for who, what. Nehmen, I take a computer, yes, who takes what, accusative, but then I can also say I take for you a computer, who takes for whom what. Similarly, it goes for kaufen, I buy a computer, who buys what, accusative verb. Then I can also say who buys for whom what, it becomes dative, yes. Similarly, you could look at other verbs like reparieren, just like in English to repair, means to repair. I repair a computer, who repairs what, I repair for you a computer, who repairs for whom what. Hochladen, a modern verb to upload. What does it require? It means who uploads what, yes, I upload German teaching videos, or who uploads for whom what, I upload for you all German teaching videos, yes. So again, similarly, you can look at the other verbs and you'll find out that they all function in the same manner. Some verbs do not at times require for whom because it doesn't make sense. For example, essen, which means to eat, who eats what, that's all we can say. It would not make any sense. Who eats for whom what, that's not applicable here. So yes, as and when required, we can add for whom, and these verbs would thus be called accusative dative verb. Perfect. All right, so we'll move on and look at the next batch of verbs which are on our left. Okay, let's look at the verb. We have geben, I give to you pizza, yes. Okay, so what does the verb require? It requires basically who gives to whom what, who, the person giving the pizza, to whom pizza is being given, and what is being given, yes. So basically geben is a pure dative verb. It always needs three elements. Earlier the verbs we saw, they could be accusative and dative, but this is a verb which is always dative, because if I take out any element, if I say I give to you and I don't say pizza, it wouldn't make sense. If I say I give pizza, it still wouldn't make sense until and unless I tell to whom. So these are the verbs which require three cases: nominative, accusative, as well as dative. That is why they are known as dative verbs, yes. Similarly, schenken, let's see what it requires. It means to gift. So it who gifts to whom what. So it requires who, person who's giving, to whom something is being given, and what, the thing that what is being given, yes. Empfehlen, to recommend, who recommends to whom what. It requires who, the person who's recommending. It requires to whom something is being recommended, and it requires what is being recommended, yes. Similarly, you have sagen, which is to say, erzählen, which is to tell, and zuhören, which is to listen. Perfect. So we saw up till now three kinds of verbs. Firstly, we saw accusative verbs, yes, which is I bake a pizza, or let's say accusative, pure accusative verbs. That will not be the right example. Let's say I meet you, yes, I meet you online here, I meet you. So that's an accusative verb. Who meets whom? Pure accusative verbs. Then let's say I bake a pizza. That is a accusative verb as well. Who bakes what? But then I can also say I bake for you a pizza. It will become accusative dative verb. And then I say I give to you pizza, which is who gives to whom what, a pure dative verb. So I meet you, accusative. I bake for you pizza, accusative dative. I give to you a pizza, pure dative verb. Yes, perfect. Now let's move on and see the last two types of verbs which are pending. Now helfen means to help, which means I help you with German. And if you make the question, it looks like who helps whom, but as you see, I have struck it off. That's the wrong question. The right question is when I say I help you, who gives to whom help? Yes, why do we say who gives to whom help? Because in German, when I say helfen, it means to give help. So the right question would be who gives to whom what? That means the verb helfen requires who, the person who's helping, to whom the help is being given, and it requires what, which is help itself. The thing is, the element of what is hidden and the element of what is hidden in the verb itself, help. Yes, that's why we don't see it, and that's why we call them hidden dative verbs. Yes, you don't see them to be dative since there is just two elements to look, but actually there are three elements, third element being hidden in the verb itself. For example, danken means to give thanks, so it requires who gives to whom what, who the person who's thanking to whom he is giving thanks, and what is he giving thanks. Yes, gratulieren, to give congratulations. So basically, who gives to whom what, it requires who, the person who's congratulating, it requires to whom he is giving congratulations, and it requires what, congratulations itself. So basically, to give congratulations. Yes, erlauben means to give permission. Yes, who gives to whom what, it requires who, the person giving the permission, to whom the permission is being given, and what, permission itself. Yes, so these are the verbs which are hidden dative verbs. So instead of saying the meaning of help, to help, you should say it rather to give help, to give thanks, to give congrats, to give permission. A quick tip: whenever a verb might have something which can be given, you can think on those lines that maybe this is a hidden dative verb. Yes, so perfect. And then we have some verbs moving on here, which you see, gefallen, it means to be liked, and we have schmecken, which is also to be liked, but especially for food. Now these are also dative verbs via the dative. Okay, I'll explain, because when you say to be liked, the question is what is liked from whom. Yes, and let me update, dative is not just to whom, for whom, it's also sometimes from whom. So with that regards, these verbs are also dative verbs. From whom is something liked. We'll talk about these two verbs later as well, so that you understand them in depth. For now, we have learned basically nominative verbs, accusative verbs, accusative dative verbs, hidden dative verbs. Yes, now we'll be doing basically the last sort of verbs. Let's see what they look like. Let's see here. Heißen, it means to be called. I am called John Berlin. So basically, who is called what? When I say I'm called John Berlin, like I have written here, the question is who. It requires a person who's called, and it requires a person what he's called. Yes, so basically it requires a name and a person. But if you look at it, both the thing belong to the same person. It's like I and John Berlin are the same person, so we basically count them as the same. So when the subject and the object are the same, when the who and what are the same, we call those verbs nominative verb, because they require just one element. Yes, both of being nominative. Yes, who is also nominative, what is also nominative, since they are the same person. Who becomes what? I become a writer. Yes, I and writer, same person. Who is what? I am a writer. I and writer are same person. Who remains what? I remain a writer. I and writer are the same person. So all these four verbs, that is to be called, to become, to be, and to remain, these are the only four German verbs which are nominative. So if you remember these, you will remember all the nominative verbs. So what is to become? Werden is to become. Yes, I become. Sein is to be. And bleiben is to remain. Who remains what? Perfect. So we'll practice these verbs since we have understood basically the types of verbs there can be based on what the verb requires. So whenever in the future you are dealing with a new verb, you just need to ask one question, and that question will be, what does the verb require? With that said, John Berlin signing off. See you in the next lesson.